Welcome to the World According to Christy podcast. This show will motivate you, inspire you, and give you tools to activate your goals and dreams, whether those dreams are entrepreneurial, corporate, or personal.
Hello and welcome to the World According to Christy podcast. I'm Christy Demetrakis, your host, author of Faith to Conquer Fear, Inspiration to Achieve Your Dreams, and Amazon bestseller, Faith to Conquer Fear, The Journey. I am so glad you are here, especially on Thanksgiving week, during Thanksgiving week, at least in the U.S. For those of you who may be listening globally, this week means nothing different to you. But this is a great week because Thanksgiving is a time for gratitude. And because this is a week of gratitude, I thought I would bring in a really special guest, someone near and dear to my heart. So for those of you who can see me, you see that I'm sitting next to what I consider one of the best looking men I have ever known, my husband, James. And for those of you who obviously are listening, I am sitting next to my husband, James. And he is my special guest today. And I thought we would just take some time to just talk about our lives, because we've been married for 26 years. We just celebrated 26 years, November the
4th.
5th. November the 5th. We always forget that. Thank God for the plate.
Yeah, it's out there.
We got this plate from somebody for our wedding.
Actually, I think it was my aunt. My aunt, I think, gave it to us.
Well, praise the Lord, because that plate has gone through 6 moves? 7 moves. And that is the one prized possession that we make sure we always know where that plate is, because we always go back and forth with, did we get married on November the 4th or November the 5th? And so it is definitely
November 5th.
November the 5th.
November the 5th.
Yeah, so you're wearing your Tar Heel shirt today.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's because we're really good.
Well, yeah. yes.
This year in football, we're really good.
Really good.
Yeah.
But that's where you and I met.
It is. It's interesting that I have this shirt on and we were there, but it was actually the week after the last football game I ever played. Mm-hmm. And we met while I was actually with a friend.
Yeah.
And he was visiting a friend of yours. And I was in the room while they were talking, and I was getting ready to have surgery that Thursday, I believe it was. Thursday or Friday, I was going to have surgery. And you walked in, and I was in my own world because in my mind, I just lost millions of dollars. I was never going to be able to play the game of football again. And I was pretty sad at the moment. And But you walked into the room, and I saw you, but I didn't want to look up, so I spent most of the time staring down at the floor.
You actually didn't even see me initially.
Initially, I didn't.
Because your back was to the door.
It was. I didn't see you behind me, but once you walked around and went to the window, that's when I saw you. And I still didn't look up.
No, you didn't.
I did not.
My best friend, because you were in the room with my best friend, who was also my suite mate at that time. And I remember we had a full conversation about you over your head, and you had no idea. Maybe you did, but you just didn't know.
I did not know. I didn't know.
We had a full conversation, and I remember specifically mouthing the words, "Is he yours?"
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it wasn't. And she's like, "Oh, no." I was like, "Yes, fair game.
No, yeah.
Fair game." I will say, it was for me love at first sight. And I know people never believe it when I say it, and you always hear it, right? But for me, and I'm not suggesting that it had to be that way for you.
It was.
Okay, right. Good answer. Good answer. Good enough. But for me, it really was. It was, I just knew you were the one. And you were not like any other guy I had ever dated.
Well, thank the God.
Yeah, well, you're right. You're right about that.
God.
Yeah, that's a good way to say that.
I tell you, it was funny. I think that's an interesting, statement. This whole concept of love at first sight and knowing. I think I don't know that I always knew that was a thing. But what I always knew is that when I met somebody, is this somebody I wanted to work with to get to a place, right? Mm-hmm. Was I willing to sacrifice some of me to make sure that we would be okay? So, I mean, I don't know that I would say necessarily what the terms we call love at first sight, but certainly I knew immediately that you were the person that I would wanted to be with for the rest of my life. The question was whether or not you were going to be as willing to sacrifice, the things some things in this relationship, as well as I had to, I had to be willing to let some things go as well. And in fact, that actually led us down the path of actually breaking up because
it did.
You had a plan.
I had a plan.
He did not. I did not.
He did not have a plan.
And I didn't come from a place of plans. Mm-hmm. So this concept of having a plan for me was pretty far. And mine was, I'm going to be okay no matter what. I'll survive no matter what I do.
Because that's how you grew up.
That's how I grew up from day to day. There was no thought of, people think about nest eggs and planning for this and planning for that. Well, we were so poor. We planned to be poor tomorrow, but we didn't. That was a reality. We knew that we were poor. Yeah. And so every day we planned to deal with the fact that we were poor, but we never planned beyond that. Mm-hmm. And so
that was very different for you. Because now I didn't grow up, we weren't poor by any means, and we weren't rich, but we were, I guess, what you could call in the country at that time, middle class, I guess. We didn't want for anything. My sister and I, all our needs were met, basketball shoes, band uniforms, anything like that we needed. And my mom was a saver, and she was very good, still is, very good with money, and she taught me those things. And so when you and I met, that was one of our first
that was a difficult moment because, again, never having had money, you dealt with what you had in the moment and you used it however you needed to use it. And sometimes it was for practical things, but other times it was for the things you wanted. And that you thought that you needed. Right? Mm-hmm. And so there was for me it was difficult to disseminate between what I needed and what I wanted. Mm-hmm. My thought was if it came across my mind, I must need it. And so it was easy for me to just say, okay, I've got this, I need that, so I'm gonna sacrifice to get it. And so that concept of saving.
Yeah,
it never crossed my mind.
That was completely foreign to you.
Yeah,
and I remember that was one of our we had a lot of conversations, but the conversation that we had that took us to the next level was right after my birthday, before we got married, because we had broken up. Yep. You were still in school. You're finishing your last semester. I think it was actually summer.
It was a summer session.
It was. And he lured me to come see him because he had bought me a birthday gift. A pink short suit with a jacket.
You wanted it.
I did. It was so cute. I was cute in it too. But anywho, and he lured me down there, and I knew I still loved him. But at the time, he just had no plan.
I had nothing.
And I was already working. I was already starting my career. And I remember the conversation saying, I have a plan. What is your plan? Because that's what I really wanted to know. And at that time is when we made the decision that you would actually follow my career.
Yeah, it was exactly. In fact, I had a different philosophy just in general, growing up in a female dominated household.
Because it was just you and
your mom. It was just me and my mom
for the most part.
And so all of my life I watched my mom struggle and fight and work her way through and I knew how difficult it was for women to be able to get into positions of power, places of prestige, because I'd watched how hard it was for her to just move from where we were to where we eventually got to. But and so in my mind, I knew that no matter what, I could always survive. Right? No matter what happened, I had come from nothing, so having nothing didn't scare me, and it didn't worry me. And not knowing what tomorrow brings didn't bother me because I navigated that my entire life, the idea of not knowing. And so what I recognized was that because you had a plan, it was important that we allow your plan, we follow that plan for you, because no matter where we went or what we did, I knew I would be okay. I would be able to do something. Yeah. And I guess I do have a different philosophy about that. I think that sometimes people get really caught up and they talk about doing the things they love. And one of my philosophies in life is I do the things I have to do so that I can do the things I love. Mm-hmm. So there have been times in my life when I've taken jobs and been in careers that were not fulfilling to me, but they were necessary so that I could really do the things that were fulfilling to me, be with my family, be able to go places and enjoy each other's time. And so there were things I sacrificed to make sure that we could do the things we loved. And that's part of when I think about, when we talk about this, how we changed, I think that's one of the major things that I think we need to always share, and that is that we were willing to sacrifice it all to make sure that the other got what they needed. Yeah. And it was different at different phases of our life.
Of our marriage, exactly. Yeah. A lot has happened in 26 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's take them on the journey. So we got married in November the 5th, 1994. Yes.
Yeah, 4.
And let's see, 3 years later, on our anniversary, we created Michaela Demetrakis. Yep. So she's child number 1. And so we had her in Dallas.
We did.
Plano, Texas. And then.
So at that point we moved twice. We've gone from North Carolina to Florida. And now Florida to Plano, Texas.
Plano, Texas, exactly. And then she was 3 months old when we moved to Ohio. Because I remember when we were doing our house hunting trip, we had her laying right there on the carpet while we were looking at the house.
Right, because that's what we found too.
That's
exactly what that was.
Exactly.
That's a restaurant, by the way.
Yes, right. Yeah.
used to be a restaurant.
That just recently closed with COVID, which was fantastic, by the way. It was the first restaurant we visited in
Cincinnati.
And so we had her, and then 20 months later, 20 months later, we had Colin. Here in Ohio, in Ohio, we don't live in Ohio.
He was in Fairfield,
Ohio. Yep, had him, and then we moved 3 years later to Michigan. He was starting school. He started school at 4.
It was 4 years later.
Yeah, no,
4-ish, because that's right.
About 4 years, and then we moved to Michigan.
Don't ever want to go back.
We don't really want to go back to Michigan, no.
Ever.
Nothing against anybody who lives in Michigan.
It was north of Detroit, but it was the winters.
Oh my gosh.
Miserable.
And and people told us that. They said, you're going to be depressed. You people get depressed in Michigan. And I said, who gets depressed over the weather? That makes no sense. Boy, when May came around and I was talking to my mom who lives in North Carolina, and she was talking about how beautiful it was and her flowers, they were already coming up, and I was driving down the highway and I still saw snow, black snow all the way up to the edges of the cars. I was like, oh yeah, that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
It was 18 months that
we could not move fast enough. I would have moved that whole house by myself.
God. Yeah, that was probably our least favorite place to live. Was that our least favorite place?
Oh, I think by
so.
far.
Yeah, I think so. Because we left there and then we went to
Arkansas
after that. And Arkansas, we were there for a little over 3 years. Right at 3 years?
It was a little more than that, wasn't it? I mean, it was right around 3 or 4 years.
3 years or so, and then we moved to Cincinnati. But what was interesting, so talk about a change. When we lived in Arkansas, that's when things got interesting from a married life perspective.
Right. Well,
it's roles. What changes are roles.
Well, a lot of things changed. It's interesting that it changed where it did, because that was also the first time that I had ever had a man in my life as my pastor who would hold me accountable to doing the things that a husband should do. And so all this time I had just been doing what I knew to be right, but I didn't know why, and I didn't have a rhyme or reason, and I didn't understand why it was the right thing to do. I just kind of did it. And so there were places where I made mistakes that I would have been able to avoid had I had that kind of guidance prior. But
because you didn't grow up with a father,
right? I didn't grow up with a father, so I didn't. All I did was do the things that I knew. I did the opposite of what I saw done to my mom, and made sure that I would never commit those same. And I say sins, but they weren't necessarily all just sins. They were things that were not appropriate and not good for my mother. And I said I never wanted to be that. I never wanted to cause my wife to have that kind of stress. Now the other part of it was I also wanted to be married forever, as opposed to my mom, who I love dearly. Mom, when you see this, don't get mad. My mom and I have we have a conversation quite frequently that the only man that she would ever be able to live with was me. I was it. I was the only one ever. And so I knew what I wanted to be. I didn't want to have a lot of relationships. I wanted to have one. I wanted to have one meaningful, lifelong relationship that grew, that got better with time. And
your mom said that nobody else would ever live with either one of us. So
yeah, she did say that.
Kind of had to stay together. But go on, continue. I digress.
So anyway, when we got to Arkansas, that's where I finally found someone I would actually listen to. There may have been other people. I just wasn't prepared to listen to them at that point. I didn't trust them enough. I didn't have a good enough relationship with them to allow them to actually speak into my life. So once I got to Arkansas and I met Pastor Dexter and realized, even though I was doing some of the things, I didn't know why, but I knew I wanted to do better. And I watched him and looked at what he was doing and said, wow, I want to keep going like that. I want to do those same things. And that is the place where I had to learn, because growing up in my world, you were required as a man to work every day, to bring home the bacon, to be the primary breadwinner.
That's the expectation. And that was a Southern expectation too.
It was.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we get to Arkansas and I'm doing well for a moment, but for those of you who have never been to Arkansas, Bentonville, Arkansas, it is a good place to be. However, it is limited in what it is that you can do.
Depending on your industry.
Depending on the industry, correct. And so I remember working, and then the next day I wasn't. I didn't have a job anymore, and what was I supposed to do? And I didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. Men work every day. We go out and we work every day. And all of a sudden, I couldn't go to work every day. And I had to take on a different role. Yeah. And that role change was probably, it could have been much more difficult than it was, but because of you and because of the way we were able to talk through it and work through it, we got through that. Not only did we get through it, we thrived through it. We did thrive.
This, you know what, and I don't want to, just make light of that, because that was a really big deal on a lot of fronts, and that's one of our biggest testimonies. We have quite a few that we cannot share in this limited amount of time, but that's really one of our biggest testimonies, because when you lost your job, when we bought our home in Arkansas, that was one of the most expensive homes we've ever bought, and we could afford it. And we could have afforded more, but that's that's what we chose, and that was the house that we loved, and so we bought that home with 2 salaries.
Yep.
And so, first testimony is when you lost your job, that was a huge chunk of the salary that went away, but we didn't miss a beat.
Not one.
We did not miss a beat. And there's a whole lot of story behind that, but we absolutely didn't miss a beat. And then we collectively came to the decision that you would just continue to take care of the kids, right? That we weren't going to, because we knew, we thought we might be moving again at some point, in the future. And we said, hey, why don't we just do this? Right. For a while, our kids were at the ages where having a parent at home all the time was not a bad thing, right? And, of course, you're now an assistant principal, so clearly he could do the work, which was better than me doing the work. But so we made that decision together. But I'll tell you, I was of the mindset as well, the same thing, that mentality of, if your body's working, you need to be working. And that's just not how I grew up, where the husband was at home with the kids. And we just, that's one of those things. It's that communication.
Right.
Because we both you had to deal with it from a man's perspective, like value, like still feeling valued. Right. And I had to think about it from, I was thinking about, like, what is my family going to think that my husband doesn't work?
Right.
And so that was a big deal. And then we ended up moving to Cincinnati. And I think we still waited a few more years before you continued that until I got out of a really demanding role. So that was like another 3 years at least that you were in that role. Once
it was
I got
a total
to Cincinnati.
it was a total of
7.
Total of 5.
5? Okay.
It was total of 5. It was 3 years 2 years in Arkansas and 3 years here. Yep. And I was doing other stuff.
Right.
But my primary responsibility was to make sure that the kids were getting the things they needed to, they needed to be successful, and that we demanded as a family.
Yeah.
So there were some expectations in there that were different, and in that time, I think I think for a man, the hardest part of that is if you don't get validation that you're still the husband of the house, that you're, and I'm always careful to say this, my wife, you allow me to lead. You allow me to lead in every situation, no matter what the situation is. But it's a choice. So it's you choose to allow me to lead, and you're always there. And I'm not foolish, right? So I understand that I might be leading, but when I don't know, when I don't know, I'm wise enough to understand my wife knows or has insight, and so I always turn to you. And so we really make decisions together for the good of the family. But if a man doesn't get validated that he's important, and same thing for a wife, if a wife isn't validated that she's important, then everything falls apart. And so there's this process of being willing to give all of you all of the time, and sometimes I think in marriage we get confused and we think it's 50-50.
No, people, no.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't even, mathematically, it's just not even going to work. Yeah, you have to be, marriage is selfless, and we don't, we haven't gotten it right? We're not proposing, we've gotten it right, and it kind of depends on the day.
Right.
Where we are, but I think the reason that we have been able to be together and it still feel like I'm in awe when I think about that I've been with the same person for 26 years.
27, almost 28 if you want to be.
Well, that's the married part, because we dated for 2 years.
2 years
before we got married. And so I'm in awe. Number one, that I made this level of commitment and I want to be here, right? It's not even like, oh gosh, right? It's not, I cannot recall a day when I regretted it.
Right.
You have your moments like, oh, but I've never had a time when I said, gosh, I wish I had chosen differently, or I wish there was a different person, or I would have done things. So there's never a day. And I always say I married my soulmate.
Amen.
And that's what I pray for my kids. And I don't know what you pray. We pray different things, but I have always prayed for my kids since they were born, that they would find their soulmates. That's because that's what gets you through the tough stuff, right? Sure. It's having that partner, that person that is ride or die. I literally, before we went to bed the other night, I just looked at him and I said, what did I say? I said, honey, I'm just glad to be doing life with you. I'm glad I get to do life with you. And it was just random, but I'm glad I get to do life with you, because there's nobody else I would rather be with. And if you think about our lives, people see whatever they see, but we just kind of we like movies. We like to eat out.
I think we spend, if we're being real.
Yeah.
Especially now with COVID, aside from when I leave the house and then come back, we're always together. I mean, you'll go get your hair cut. I might not go to that, right? There's some functions you might go to from a work perspective, or some other that I won't go to. But for the most part, we're always together, right?
Always together.
And so.
And I still like you.
Yeah, exactly. I sometimes I don't like myself. So the fact that you like me despite that is kind of interesting. But I think that goes back to something that goes much deeper, and that is that while we've been living this life together, it has always been about being together, right? There's never been, I hear this all the time, and again, I'm not condemning people. I'm just saying it for what it is. Mm-hmm. I hear people say, I just go off into my space. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll go out and work out in the yard. That's usually when I'm thinking or working on something, or occasionally I'll go in the basement or something, mm-hmm. or you'll go into your office, and we'll do those things. But they're never long-term moments.
Right. It's not to get away. It's not to get away. It's just everybody needs space.
To think.
Everybody needs space. And we're fortunate we were able to do that. But to your point, even when I'm in my space, I venture into your space because I can.
And we do. and I think that's because when we think about the things that we're ready to go do next, all of that's about being together, right? Mm-hmm. Like, please, pandemic, go away. Let me just throw that out there. I need this pandemic to stop.
We need it to stop.
I need the world to get to a place where I can travel again.
I know. Oh my God, right? I so miss it. Mm-hmm.
But I never think about, and I say it so that I can travel. But what I'm really saying is so that we can travel. Mm-hmm. It's we want to go together. There are things we want to see
and experience
together. Mm-hmm. And I think that is fundamentally what makes us, what helps us get do life together, is that we want to do it together. Mm-hmm. And that is I remember a long time ago we used to tell married couples mm-hmm. when they would come to us and talk about the work that it takes to be married, and we would say to them, not really work, right? When I go to work, again, I will go do some things. I might do a job that I don't like,
right?
That I don't enjoy, mm-hmm. right?
To
achieve another goal. Yeah. I may very well go do something that I don't like mm-hmm. to work, right? But that doesn't really happen in a marriage, right? What you do is
it takes effort. It does take effort. So let's not sugarcoat it. It does take effort.
But it doesn't take this. You don't have to do things you don't like. What you have to do is learn. Oh, I guess I shouldn't say that, because the reality is that what it requires is that you be willing to deal with some stuff that you don't like.
For the good
of the relationship. And I think that is where we fundamentally have an advantage, mm-hmm. because both of us are always thinking about what's good for the other person, not always what's good for me. Mm-hmm. And that is, I think that's one of the things that really keeps us grounded and balanced, is that everything we do. And then I think the other piece of it is, you will call me out and I will call mm-hmm. you out. And I think that is a different thing too.
But you got to have that person, right? And you need to have that safe space. And, I don't have a best girlfriend. And I don't think you have a best guy friend. And again, that's part of the closeness, because I know I can say it. You live with me for however long, right? So you know the heart behind it, but I can still say it, and you're not going to hate me because I said it. I mean, you just got to have that safe space. And so anyway, we could talk forever, and we're not going to talk forever. But I just wanted to have you on my World According to Christy podcast, because you are a part of my world. He's so cute. But anyway, so I wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I am just pleased as punch that I get to support you in the things that you do.
I told you guys, you know what? This is what I love about this man right here. I can just say, honey, we're doing a podcast today. He's like, okay, what are we talking about? I said, I have no idea. We're just going to flow. And that's what we did. And clearly he has no problem talking.
At all.
He said, we're not going to be able to talk for 30 minutes. I went, mm-hmm. I know you. All I need to do is plant a seed here and there. So, anywho, but hey, again, I want to thank you to my husband. He is the love of my life, absolutely. And you probably hear why I love him, but we have a fantastic relationship. I thank God for him every day. Every day I thank God for him and for the wonderful family that we have created by being together. And thank our parents for having us and having him and all that good stuff. But anywho, so I want to thank you all. And I want to wish you a wonderful, again, those of you who are in the U.S., I want to wish you a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Hey, I know it looks different this year. Ours is going to look different this year as well. But let's remember what it's all about. It's about gratitude. So what are the things that we are thankful for? Stop thinking about the things that you don't have and what's different than what it was before. Be fortunate and recognize the blessings in what we do have. You know, hopefully we have our health. We still have family. We still have, food to eat. Whatever it is, and it's different for everybody. But whatever it is, just be thankful. Be thankful for what it is that you have and enjoy what it is. Because there's no going back to what it was. Even if the pandemic ends tomorrow, there's no going back. The world has changed. And so we have to continue to be agile and flexible and always be thanking God for what he has chosen to give us. So with that said, I am doing what I love. I will talk to you soon. Enjoy the Thanksgiving break. Remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. And I will talk to you next.
Thank you for listening to the World According to Christy podcast. Remember to subscribe to ensure you receive updates on upcoming episodes. Check out free resources to help you increase your faith, increase your confidence, and conquer your fears at faithtoconquerfear.com.